So this thing is rolling. Sorry about those little, I'm not sure if it glitched or if it went through. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. Holy cow. So this is in response to a video that I saw by Alimonte. And this guy, he speaks from the gut. He does. He's very passionate about what he says, and he's very blunt to the point, which I like. He doesn't have a lot of the stuff that's beyond the echo chamber, but you can definitely tell that he's stereotypical, almost stereotypical Obama. There's some stuff that really isn't. But regarding the topic in question, it's going to be the disabled person kidnapped by Black Lives Matter. Now, those that know me, Lord, this hair is never going to get right. Those that know me, I am no fan of Black Lives Matter. You cease to be a legitimate movement anytime that you are screaming, kill police, you know, what do we want, dead cops, what do we want it now, and, you know, talking about Hurricane Matthew being a potential for looting because, hey, white people. And there's a list of other things like telling people, oh, they're white people, so let's get them. You know, trying to tell people that white people today have to answer for all these things that happened in the past and all this, and going so far as to demand reparations. When you do stuff like that, again, look at the definition of the word terrorist that uses violence, threats, and acts of violence, implied or otherwise, in order to get things done. So far, Black Lives Matter has done all of these things. I mean, they set fire to 2 of their towns. And the very thing with the guy that was justly or unjustly, depending on how you look at it, killed by cops, they went and destroyed that freaking business, the shop the guy was at. The shopkeeper didn't do anything to them. But they went and tore his place down. And the guy's family member was screaming, you know, death to this, death to that. And it's like, come on, people. And the excuses that get made. That's the worst thing about it. So, you know, I don't hold Black Lives Matter in very high regard, and I never will. And I will never hold supporters of Black Lives Matter in a high regard because, again, it's like this modern-day cult. Except now we don't really have religious cults, or we have them, but they're just not as prominent. What we have is movement cults. They've upped their game, and now instead of a religious order, it's a movement order, and it has all the same stuff. It has all the same excuses, and its proponents make excuses, and certain officials in politics, in Congress or in the White House, they take advantage of this. So it emboldens them being the people within these movements, or that look to these movements for guidance or how to live their lives. Which you never should do that, but hey, you know, what are you going to do? How many of these people actually have, you know, functional families these days anyway? Responsibility certainly is a thing. But getting off that, so basically I have no respect for Black Lives Matter. And, you know, I don't really care who you are, where you come from. I don't care what your skin tone is or your sexual orientation. I don't give a damn about any of that. The fact of the matter is, by your merits shall you be judged. And what are these movements really doing for us? Not a goddamn thing. Not a damn thing. They're collecting your money. They're telling you should be afraid. They're whipping you up into a frenzy. They're setting brother against brother, you know, friend against neighbor. But what are they actually accomplishing? And the answer is nothing. They're putting on a show and you're getting fooled by it. And this isn't just Black Lives Matter. All current modern movements do these. They do these things. But getting slightly off topic because we're getting to the fact of Black Lives Matter. Just to kind of situate how I feel about them, you know, they're a disgrace. They're the modern day version of the KKK. They just have a different skin tone. And the fact that after burning their own town down, Obama would turn around and say, "Oh, you're doing an awesome job," says a lot of things about both. Oh, hey, a corrupt establishment said that the people that probably shouldn't support him, because he's not doing anything to help them, is doing a great job after they just burned down a town and called it a protest. That is not a protest. That is really, really screwed up. And if it was somebody saying like white lives matter and doing that very same thing, I would have the exact same things to say about them. I don't want to hear about your talk about privilege. I've had to work my ass off my entire life for what little I've had. And it's funny that the people that talk about privilege, their parents are making 6 figures a year or something close, and they make more money than any of us could look at, so how would they know exactly what not being privileged is? We have people like Bernie Sanders that are saying that white people don't know what it is to be poor. Crack open the history book you probably forgot next to your economics book, and turn to the pages that talk about the Great Depression. Turn to the founding of this country and how things were actually really bad and kind of screwed up for a while. Hell, if you want to go European, go down to the freaking Dark Ages, the feudal times. You should know all about that. That's the very things you're trying to bring back, where if you say the wrong thing, or you talk to the wrong person, or look at the wrong person, or look like the wrong person, suddenly you're under fire. All this fervor and all this fanaticism, but nobody's got any freaking sense. And it's really sad that intelligent people go into these things, and they come out dumber than a box of rocks and throw that potential right out the window. Again, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like. Actions speak louder than words, and this privilege bullshit needs to stop. But again, so now that we've justified exactly how, well, not justified, but spelled out just how I feel about these morons that are known as Black Lives Matter, and how I would feel the same about any other group that was anything like them. Now we get into this, because the official time thing is Black Lives Matter supporters versus a Trump supporter or versus a disabled person. Okay, so even in spite of my not liking Black Lives Matter with a fervor, I will say there is no evidence that I've found so far, to link the kidnappers to Black Lives Matter. Okay. I will call it, there are things I will like and there are things that I don't like, but I will call it straight and objectively down the middle. There's also nothing to say that that poor guy actually supported Trump in any way, shape, or form. We know that he was disabled, mentally disabled, and schizophrenic. They actually found this guy wandering the streets in a very disoriented manner and looking like, obviously, like he had seen better days. And then later on, they happened to get word of a video that was circulating around that matched the description of this man. That's how they actually found this guy, and they started putting 2 and 2 together, for those of you that don't know. But Black Lives Matter, while it's being mentioned, I don't know that these guys are actually affiliated with them. Call it down the middle. Now, some people are saying that Obama led to this, and Black Lives Matter led to this. And there are some people that agree and disagree on it. My personal opinion is that, honestly, I do think it's somewhat led to this. There are people that are accusing Trump for this, which, okay, whatever. Because white nationalism and all this, he didn't embolden anything, and the people in his party that were actually close to him that were not white nationalists, he actually did good on getting rid of them pretty quickly. Which people would know if they'd stop listening to their echo chamber and actually start objectively looking at things, or saying, okay, what's this? What's this? What's really going on? And, do an actual bit of fact checking. It's not miracle. This is not rocket science. It takes less than 10 minutes sometimes. Less time than it is to flip through your average selection of YouTube videos, for crying out loud. But regarding on, and white nationalism, good God. Yeah, those guys, they stopped, well, I won't say they stopped being a thing, because you occasionally run into them here and there. I've occasionally run into them here and there, and I don't like them any more than I like Black Lives Matter. I think it's more or less the same thing, different side of the coin. And when you become what you hate, well, that's worse than throwing away your own soul. It really is. Yes, I'm playing with a Rubik's Cube. I do that from time to time. How I managed to actually solve one face of this thing and nothing else, I got nothing. Anyway, little momentary distractions aside, that was not juggling. I'm a horrible juggler. Okay, I'm not a Czechoslovak. But distractions aside, you can have white nationalism, but that does not give black nationalism a pass. It does not automatically, oh, well, they're justified because they're dealing with this, this, and this. No. If I walk up to someone in a crowded street and hit someone in the face, it does not matter what their skin tone is. It does not matter what gender they are. It does not matter how much money they make. It is still assault. I don't care what your excuse is. It's still assault. It's still wrong. Anybody that makes excuses after the fact, there is something wrong with them. And that's probably the most disturbing thing about this, is not the 4 crazies we locked away, but the sheer amount of crazies that we have still roaming the streets that think this is actually okay behavior. Because they're going to be the ones that will do this shit, and they'll just make sure they don't get caught. That's a problem. And that is a big problem, and stuff like this, and Black Lives Matter's behavior emboldens them. Because when they burn down their own town, and not only does Obama not tell them off about it, but says, you're doing a terrific job, then yes, they lead to this shit happening. They do. And every chance that Obama and Michelle Obama, the Obamas, every chance those two have got, they have been saying, you know, they've been making all kinds of statements that are racially charged to whip up the crowd. They've been playing people. They know it's an easy card to play. Not the race card, but the emotion card. And that's the one that usually gets people suckered in. And that's the one that they've been playing. And I won't even go so far as to say, well, I will say it's not just Obama's fault, and it's not just Michelle's fault, because as I mentioned, you know, we had Bernie Sanders, white people don't know how to be poor. Dude, you know well about the Depression, about the Great Depression, and what people did. Actually, if you're ever in the mood, check out and see what they actually ate during those times, and how resourceful some people had to be, and how bad times really were. And that was regardless of who you were. You were rich if you had $5 in your pocket. You were even richer if you actually knew what to do with it to make it last for a month. But white people don't know what it is to be poor. Yes, screw you, asshole. White people don't know what it is to be poor. We very well know. Everybody knows what it is to be poor, which segues into my next point that this guy said. He asks, when was race relations good? And he said that the country was built on slave labor. This is something that we hear out of Black Lives Matter a lot. As much as I'd like to say they're full of shit, I'm going to be flat out honest with you. Look, dudes, can you name me a country that wasn't? Egypt was. The Hebrew countries were. Indians, of which I have lineage, guess what? They traded in slaves, sometimes for horses and sometimes for women. The colonies were founded on indentured servitude, and that would be England, Spain, the Dutch, France. So, feel free to start demanding reparations from these guys anytime soon, since they're the ones that brought everybody over to the colonies. And even while that was going on, the natives that were settled here did actually use their own form of trade, in particular if you were a tribe that was different than them. So, there was that. Most people don't like to kind of think on that much because it kind of destroys their entire argument. Well, it was built on slaves and you should feel bad for something my ancestors may or may not have done thousands of years ago that literally everyone did, including the African tribes themselves, who then traded you to the Arabics, who you won't say shit about because then you call it Islamophobia? Pick a side, folks. Start thinking these things through. I know there are people out there that like to say shit just because they love to hear themselves talk or because they love to look intelligent. But the reality is, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And if you actually cracked open a history book and read it, and I mean read, actually read it, not just cherry pick, oh, I see this, it must mean this. No, read it and then read a little bit further. Like I could be, if I go through that article and oh my god, Black Lives Matter support this, let's go after Black Lives Matter. That is cherry picking. But to actually read something, you go through and okay, I look at this, I don't really see the ties here. Okay, so let me go over here and let me look through some things and see if there is actually any affiliation with this group. No? Okay. I may not like this group, but I'm not going to blame them for everything that happens. Just like people should not blame Trump for every little thing that happens. I find it funny. There is the thing about people protesting outside the White House because they're pissed off at Trump. So the person that you supposedly love and is your personal savior, you're interrupting their meal, and when Trump hasn't even gotten into office yet, and I think it's actually a few days before he does. Huh. Again, people not thinking things through. This is also very common in movements. People are great at reacting, but they're not good at thinking things through. They're great at short-term reactions, but not short or long-term actions. There's a big difference between an action and a reaction. An action is generally something you thought through. A reaction is something that you just did from the seat of your pants, mainly just to do it. And that's what happens, a lot of short-term reactions. But before I get too off topic here. So, again, almost all countries were built off of slave labor to some degree. Slavery was a thing that was widely practiced around the world, around the globe. It is a horrible thing, and as much as people want to wipe all trace of it or history of it off the books, I think it's important that it remains on the books so that people understand what was wrong and why it was wrong. And I think the reason that they're trying to remove a lot of traces of history of that, they're saying because it's connected to slavery. No, I think what the real reason is, it comes down to, it reminds them that they're starting to do the same practices they didn't like, and they don't want anybody around to confront them and say, not to be that guy, but, well, there's no way to say this. Aren't you doing the exact same shit? When you say death the white people, how's that any better than, death the black people? Because equality speaks, they're both equally fucked up. Don't do it. Don't do it. Persons of color. Where do we even start with that? People of color. So, the original racist term was colored people. Now we just make it people of color and reverse the wording, and suddenly it's okay? We had segregation, segregation, which basically is, or was, white-only spaces and black people were separate. This was successfully fought, and everybody won by integration. They fought segregation, and they won. Really dark time, and personally, I'm glad we won. But now, these same idiots are turning around, and they want safe spaces that are white-free zones. Segregation, safe space. Segregation, safe space. White-only zones, black-free. Black-only zones, white-free. Segregation, safe spaces. It's the same shit in a different wrapper. Why are we making excuses for this? So to talk about Alimonte and his whole thing as to, these institutions don't cause this. Yes, they do. This is the example that they set. This is the garbage they put into people's minds. So you may not be affiliated with it, or directly affiliated with it, but they're still imparting a teaching that is not a teaching, that is disastrous. They are imparting the wrong way to be adults. And they are telling them that this kind of behavior is okay. So when you set a standard like that, and the president turns around and backs you up and says you're doing excellent work. Segregation, safe spaces. Excellent work, guys. Burn down a town. Excellent work, guys. Death the police. Excellent work? I'm sorry. I'm looking at all of this and I'm going, there is not one bit of this that is excellent. All of this is really freaking horrible. Why is our president saying this? Our president, who people look to, is saying these things and legitimizing them. So that black youth that has now been fed full of fear and bullshit and is told that they can never get anywhere because of the evil white guy. And it's always the straight white male that comes under fire. They never talk about, they have nothing to say about the Chinese, they have nothing to say about the Mexicans, And not even usually about the white women. It's always the straight white male that is the enemy. You ever notice that? That's the big thing with these movements. People got problems. Y'all, religious or non-religious aside, y'all need Jesus, for crying out loud. Anyway, but that kind of worms aside. So the whole thing of, did Obama ultimately cause it? More or less, he added to it. He added to the fuel to the fire. Did Black Lives Matter play a part? They played a big part. They did not tell these people, you need to go out and do this, but they created a mental and emotional environment that sparked them, compelled them to do it themselves. If you get my drift. Did they tell, like I said, did they put a gun to their head and said, you have to do this? Did they hand this guy a dossier and said, let's mark, to pick a random white dude and just torture the shit out of him? No, they did none of these things. But what they did was create an environment that says this kind of behavior is okay, and if you do it, those within our group will applaud you and accept you. And to prove that, we have only to look at the talking heads in certain media set, Don Lemon and other people, that are turning around and say, oh, it's not a crime, it's just troubled youths. I'm sorry, but what was one of the feminists' biggest problems that they had with people? Them saying that, what was it? It was, oh yeah, boys will be boys whenever, or they're just being boys whenever it comes to stuff like rape. Okay. So, that's not okay. And it's not really. It's not an excuse. I don't care who you are, there is no excuse for that bullshit. But now we have people doing disturbing things, but suddenly, because Black Lives Matter was brought up, and suddenly because certain people just want to look good on TV, oh, well, it's just a trend. It's just a phase. Kids will be kids. No, it's fucked up, it's horrible, and we need to teach these kids right. I am personally glad that they have been charged with hate crimes, and I'm glad that they're going to be locked up, hopefully for a long time. What really worries me is those people that defend this. And some of them are whiter than I am, but they'll defend this shit. And they'll come up with 1,001 excuses, like privilege, our country was built on slaves. These people don't know a damn thing about a damn thing. But they will mindlessly defend it to the death. Those are the people that scare me. Those are the people that are sincerely and seriously fucked up in the head. And those are the people that are out walking the streets right now. So, honestly, if anything, we need a lot more mental health in this country. While those people, the four that did this, are worrisome, what's even more worrisome is the number of people that are still out in the streets that actually prescribe to this bullshit, that actually, hearken to this and think, oh, it's just a phase, or they make excuses for it. Why make excuses for this? So, let's see, what else? Blacks in prison as slave labor. Now, this is one that I've personally been in a protest for. Yes, I've done activism. Done it quite a bit, actually. So, a lot of the trope terms that I hear, a lot of the catchphrases and buzzwords, I'm not only very well versed with, probably even helped invent a few of them. Sorry. But I understand a lot of how it works. I understand a lot of how these movements work. I understand a lot of how these activists work, or at least how they claim to work, and what they really do behind the scenes when your eyes are not on them. So if you ever have any questions about that, I'll tell you more than you ever really wanted to know. Prison slave labor, privatized prisons has been something that I have spoken out against quite a few times. I won't deny that there is a problem with that, with privatized prisons, and some of which don't even answer really to our laws so much. They do within certain regulations, but then there's a lot of stuff under the table that is really kind of messed up. But as far as the prison labor and stuff, I think part of it is for offsetting costs, and then I think the original thing was to give them a little bit of spending money, to give them some sort of savings afterwards. Now, there's a gray area to whether that actually happens or not. I believe in most cases it really usually doesn't. But it was also meant to be so that they would understand that their time in prison was not it was not supposed to be a fun experience. They were in there because, well, you done fucked up. But what it wound up becoming was companies could just step in and go, hey, I can make a profit off of this. Okay. There are more blacks in prison than anything. Okay, fair enough. Some would say that says more about the prisons than it does anything else, but again, you have to look at a lot of the environment that black people are in. And a lot of it is by their own doing. There are some people that work very hard to get out of their situations, and they do. They do. Do not talk to me about privilege when you have scholarships, when you have things where you are guaranteed a job because of the color of your skin, which, if that were to happen in our case, we'd be called racist. But, I mean, again, a lot of the environments, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of high crime, there's a lot of corruption. I don't really have a lot of experience within those communities, so as much as I would love to speak on it, I really can't speak on what it would take to fix that. And a lot of what I have gotten has largely been really, you want to talk about dealing with racism? Well, you can't understand because you're white. Honey, you have no idea the shit that I've been through. I could get into it, but I really don't want to, especially not in front of you two. But some of us have all experienced our own personal walk-through hells. And some of them quite frequently. That aside, it's hard to really get people's honest views because they're trying to be political about it. They're not really going to give me a straight talk. They're trying to give me a slanted talk. They're trying to win me over. And I'm like, screw you. I just want to know. Just give it to me straight. Tell me what's up. What is, what isn't. If it's good, okay. If it's bad, okay. You'd be surprised how much fucked up shit I've both seen and heard. And or experienced. So, you know, it's not something I can really speak on very much because, again, I like to speak on stuff that I know. I don't know that particular aspect of things. All I know is what I've heard, and what I've heard is generally not very pretty. But what I've also heard, usually from people that came out of these communities, is that if the community would actually get back into things, we could stand to do this as a whole, not just black communities, but all communities, and, you know, basically kind of unite together and start having communities again, a lot of this stuff would change. We start building each other up. We start growing as a people instead of just looking for someone new to blame, which is the only thing that our movements have to offer us. More blame. Oh, it's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. And we need more money, more of your money, to fight this. Except we're not going to fight it. The only way we're going to fight it is make a bunch of accusations, say stupid stuff, and then say it's this person's fault. Yes, I feel particularly passionate about that point because I'm tired of the shit and I'm tired of the games. Infinite promise, infinite potential, but zero payout. And this is the model that's been going on for over 50 years. This is why these things keep failing. Or rather, they keep failing us. Themselves, oh, they're laughing at us straight to the bank. Just, this shit needs to stop. But, again, if you want to fix the prison per capita thing, I think a big part of that would be fixing the communities. And not just black communities, all communities. Actually have a community again. I remember times when you could actually walk outside in daylight. We went from a society that survived the Great Depression to a society that cannot survive a spoiler alert. We went from a society that you could walk outside and, you know, your kids could play in the streets. They could play with their friends and neighbors. You could leave, possibly, depending on where you lived, you know, leave the door unlocked at night, you had nothing to fear. To, if you let your kids run out to the park without your supervision, they're called free range and you could possibly get put in charges for child endangerment. You could have them taken away for being unfit parents, just for letting them go from point A to point B without you watching them every step of the way. We've really skipped some levels. And it's not the places that have changed, and it's not the laws that have changed. They're still there. They're not being enforced very well. And it doesn't help when every time someone tries to enforce the law, suddenly someone steps in, oh, they didn't do nothing. They're just some poor, misunderstood victim. No, the moment they broke into my house and took a shot at me, they stopped being a victim and started becoming a smudge on the floor. I understand they have a family too, but I have a family that I want to live to see. And if I just let them come in there and rob me, potentially kill me, guess what? None of y'all gonna care about that. I'm a straight white guy. Ain't not one person that's gonna care about that except a close circle of friends. And that's the hard reality. It's not something that will be a trendy media blurb. So nobody's gonna care. But again, victim. Oh, they came in and they got shot, but they're the victim. This person defended themselves, but they're the evil monster. And things have gotten really, really screwed up in a lot of levels. Like I said, we went from one thing to this. And in some cases we just went from one extreme to another. We went from accepting nothing to suddenly accepting everything, and if you don't accept it, you're some sort of heartless monster. And now we have people that actually believe themselves to be animals, and they identify as animals. And I'm sitting there going, and I got to witness all of this. I mean, this is a radical change. In the 80s, this wasn't happening growing up. In the 90s, kind of, well, no, there really wasn't a lot of that. 2000 hit, it's just like we threw all common sense out the window and we just started puking our guts out and our brains went right along with our guts. Because we lost our brains to actually determine what the hell was right from wrong, or what was sensible and what was sane versus what was, okay, no, you're full of it. And we lost our guts enough to actually stand up and say so as a united front. We had people that wanted to cling to these causes, and again, the only thing they've given us is a bunch of garbage and a nice bill attached at our expense. What's it going to take? Back again to the Black Lives Matter versus Trump supporter. Again, I completely condemn this. I condemn even more the people that are making excuses for it. Those are the people that you really ought to watch, unfriend, or they should probably get fired, because those are the kind of people that should not be in society. And apparently, if this election was any indicator, we have a lot of those people. A lot of those very paranoid people that think that, oh, this person's coming out to get us. This person's coming out to get us. The dude hasn't even taken a day in office and you're already crying the doom bells. Shut up, sit down, and use that head of yours for something other than a hat rack. Think with your head, not with your emotions. And of course, fact check anything. And that's whether it's Trump's side, the Clinton side, the media's side. I can't tell you how many times I've seen articles from Salon and BuzzFeed and all that stuff, and I'm going, ugh, they were fake news before it was a thing. And yet there's some people that go through it. Occupy Democrats. There's so many people that freaking think that they're the gospel, and I'm sitting there going, PolitiFact, which is known for being a little weird, has gone and said, these guys are completely full of it. Most of their fact-checking, actually all their fact-checking, has situated Occupy Democrats as not knowing what the hell they're talking about to liar, liar, pants on fire. Their statements have only proven just a little bit more unfactual than Trump's. And that's coming from biased media. Probably a good time to stop following these people and hanging on their every word. Just eating up whatever they say. But these people did lead to this. And the more it is allowed, the worse it's going to get. I am glad that they stopped this. I am not surprised to see that a president had nothing to say about it. All these other things he's very vocal about, why is he not saying anything about this? As far as Trump goes, that guy can't say anything without it being skewed or taken this way or that way anyway, and this guy has said some pretty dumb things. But there's not really much he can say at this point. He's already told people, I know it's probably not going to do any good, but stop it. Stop it right now. This is disheartening and you should stop it. That's exactly what he said. So, I mean, at least he actually came up, say what you will about him, at least he actually had the... Yeah, it clicked off. My computer does this weird thing where it tries to re-verify itself. I'm currently got some Windows errors, so it's doing that. But he at least had the guts to say something and get something situated here. So to clarify, I didn't see Black Lives Matter mentioned. The kid doesn't seem to be a Trump supporter. He is still alive. Mangled, confused, but alive. They are getting charged with hate crimes, which is good because it will at least send a message that this is bad behavior. Unfortunately, for Black Lives Matter supporters and the people making excuses for them, I don't think it's going to dissuade them from future attacks because, as far as they're concerned, the president's got their back. And they really don't care who they hurt just so long as they get the right statement across. And their statement is they feel they can do whatever the heck they want at anyone's expense. These are the things that need to change. We need to seriously stop turning a blind eye to movements. We need to cut off all support to movements, and that basically means that if a movement is found to be acting like a terrorist organization, or they're being fraudulent, which means they're saying this, but they're promoting this, that we cut off their ability to have donations, we freeze their bank accounts. Free speech is a great thing. It becomes hard to maintain when you have enough people that are abusing it so badly. And I believe that's basically what the song, dance, and scheme is. To have enough of this stuff go down that people will cry something has to be done, and then you have the authoritarian method. Then you have the dictatorship stuff really step in, because they're going to demand something's going to be done, and they're not going to think enough to go, wait, there may be a price tag attached to this that we're not going to like. Again, reaction over action. Emotion over thinking. Insanity over reason and logic. And logic and reason states that when this gets out of hand and the movements have finally crossed the line too much, that people are going to turn around and go, something's got to be done about this, let's make a law. Okay? How do you make that law without screwing everybody else over? That becomes a problem. Especially considering how inflated movements have become. They have become the next version of Congress, the next version of the House, and they are just as corrupt, if not more so in many cases. They don't have that. The biggest problem that they don't have, the thing that they don't have, that all of the other wings do, is a form of scrutiny. Because it's not allowed, because suddenly you're against free speech, you're against this, you're racist, you're sexist, you're homophobe, you're whatever. And then they can turn around and get whatever they want. Because if they don't like you, they'll threaten you, or they'll threaten themselves. How many times have you heard someone say, well, if you don't do this, they might commit suicide. So if I don't accept this, they might commit suicide. Is that not holding someone emotionally hostage? Saying that if you don't give them what they want, they might commit suicide? What does that tell that person? Okay, so if I want to get this next thing, I'm just going to threaten my own life, and that's suddenly a thing? That's okay? That doesn't tell you that there is something seriously wrong with the person? That they might actually engineer something like that? These things did lead to this. And if we're not careful, and we don't start standing up and saying something about it, they're only going to get worse. I honestly hope that it doesn't. Would love to see 2017 be a great year for everybody, all nationalities, all cultures, whatever. I really don't want to see bad happen to anybody, even certain people that I can't stand. And there are a few of them that I really just absolutely loathe, but even still, I want them to have a great 2017 as well. One that institutes that it being great does not mean they get to cause suffering to other people. The only way that's going to happen is if we keep on top of this. The only way that we're going to have a country is if we're good stewards of it. Same with any organization, same with any kind of self-work, morals, or standards. Is if we're good stewards of it, then we will see things through out to the other side, things will get better. If we don't, and we haven't been for well over, I'll say 30 years because I've been alive around that long, okay, as long in that time, we've let everything go straight to heck. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. No one wants to step up and say something. No one wants to be the unpopular one. Fix it now before it fixes you. Peace out.